Hey everyone, welcome back to part three of my presentation series, Asian History, the Mongolian Empire, and Changus Khan. There's two other previous videos to this one. Please watch them in sequential order for best viewing results. I'm going to finish up here in a shorter amount of time than the last two, and I hope that if you watch this, that like I've been able to paint a bigger picture for you about a lot of truth and maybe like some of the stuff you knew already, and I filled in a gap. And like together, like I said, it's more expansive than maybe you knew before. Uh, Undeniably, the Asian culture just deserves an amazing amount of respect. It really ties in together. I talked about in the book, The Art of War. It was written before the time of Christ, but there's like this intro, this intro that they write to it. It talks about how Russia and China would never go to war with each other because their existence is ingrained within their own genetic core. And I really have found that in my travels and other things, and it's absolutely just really fascinating. I'm just totally enthralled with Eastern culture, Asian culture. I don't really think there's anything that's more beautiful. The Muslims as well, but I really believe it goes back much further than even they, and they go back a lot further than we do. And so I talked about Eastern medicine and my love for that, and there's this. I talked about acutonics, acupuncture, herbology, reflexology, just to name a few. There's a lot more than that, even than I could spend a whole lifetime and not know it all. And the key is like to promote healing, not like palliative care where you take a pill that doesn't really help you. It's more like restorative, regenerative care of sorts. And the chi points, the energy points, the meridians. There's this term that's used in this encyclopedia that's absolutely fascinating. Like I never heard this before. Internal alchemy. I thought this was the coolest thing when I found it. It's kind of very similar to Kabbalic, like the stuff that the Jewish people are into, like Kabbalic healing. Very very similar, but like it's almost like I have a separate presentation on this channel I did called based on the placebo effect, and it's sort of on the same it's really some of my proudest work on this channel. Please check that out as well. And it talks about how like almost like you can like mentally like when you get into quantum physics, like our thoughts in their most innate form are still matter because they're like energy there. And when you understand that the neurological system and energy flows through our bodies, and like you can like by me moving my finger like this, I'm sending energy to my finger, and like say my fingers hurt or my knee or whatever, my liver or my kidney, almost like I can, like almost like a robot, like self heal myself. Like it's like that deep, like really some of the coolest stuff when you get into talking about medicine. They do not want the average people to know this. And also, there's this term called dharma. In years past, I was reading I remember theology stuff I did at Liberty University. They got into all these different terms, and dharma. Like if you look up the term dharma, there's like 18, like 6 different religions that actually apply this term, and it like makes sense now when you understand the expansive aspect of like the Mongolian Empire. I'm going to show a picture here again of the Mongolian Empire at its peak. Kind of like I said, exemplifies. I showed this in the very beginning of the presentation, but at its peak, it was like I said, it covered like almost the entire world. I mean, like 80%, 70 to 80%. And that's just what we know about. And the rest of it, I really believe that they allowed a lesser race of like people that they engineered to essentially to build up the infrastructure and beachfront real estate of sorts. And this term dharma, it's like this spiritual pathway to enlightenment. It's mainly for like men and boys. That like it's basically this quest that you go out on, almost like for shamans and other things that like you only can attain through there's many different definitions, like 18 different definitions for this one term, and like it means maybe something different to everybody. But like in my sense, the word's important to me is like it's like the spiritual path to truth or like enlightenment that only attain through a series of moral tests, like a kind of almost like the Book of Job or something. It's like a test of inner strength, I guess you could say, like or gets into free will, and There's also lots of other really interesting stuff. You know about my past work. I have my abilities to control the ionosphere and manifest cloud formations. They actually talk about that in here. That, like, they use weather altercation as a weapon. And like my guess is Genghis Khan would like come into an area with his military, and like the clouds would just light up, and it was probably like fascinating to see. And it was like he was like a magician, and like people probably got scared. He could probably almost like hit people with lightning bolts or something. Like he was that badass. And I'm gonna kind of end on him, and like a segue into my next part of this series. But there's so many influences, like I said, into the whole thing. That like I talked about the Koreans, the Tibetans, the Chinese, the Japanese, the Taiwanese, the Ukrainians, the Tatars, the Cossacks, the Cambodians, the Vietnamese, the Turks, the Iranians, the Tajiks, the Uzbeks, the Indians. Like all these people tie in together into this whole thing, and the language is really cool. Like supposedly, I was reading in this thing that Khitanese or Khitan is like the old world Mongolian language, and supposedly there's like texts today that they have not deciphered, or like either like they're like forbidden to, or they're not allowed to, and it's like really 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 intriguing if you're into like the study of this as well, and I really believe like these people like are fixated on the whole with the human cloning, with the whole like the Ukrainian girls, Slavic girls. You know, they're so beautiful and this and that. I really believe a lot of the magic comes from the Persians, and also the like I said, the Asians. Like me, it's basically like it happened in phases, almost like I said, like engineering of sorts. And it was almost like they knew that like everybody would fixate on these beautiful girls, and it would like almost bring down a civilization by like not really like basically destroying the role of woman in society and like motherhood, and like gets into like other, like I said, civilizations in the Bible, talks about various falls of man. I've talked about a corollary between human cloning and technology, and I'm not going to get into it any more than that. But there's many as well, also various religious influences. There's like Maoism, Taoism, Zoroastrianism, Sikhism, Buddhism, Christianity, Judaism, Islam. And like at the core of it, you can see it's almost like where like they morphed in a sense. Another interesting thing is the Dropa stones. If you're interested in this, please check out the Dropa stones. There's like these sacred stones in China, like that, like have like this almost alien writing on them, and like nobody really knows their true origins. From what I've gathered is like by looking at them, like you could like there's almost certain things that are just divine by nature. Like you go into the National Archives and look at like the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and like the Declaration, like our founding documents, and it's almost like they speak to you just by looking at them. Or like there's like embedded codes in them or something like that. And like I really believe that like like the Roman Catholic Church has all this gold stuff, all the all this really interesting stuff, and it's cool. It goes back a lot of years, but like I really believe that what the Chinese have in their reliquaries is like far way cooler. Probably in Tibet and Nepal as well. Probably also a portal there to the Hollow Earth maybe, and. Like I said, like I told you before, that many of the Chinese people in this country are shills. Like they like pretty much any of the people, like whether they're Italians, Chinese, other like they were like the lesser of the race of their people that came here, and like otherwise they wouldn't have came here. And like so, don't necessarily use the Chinese in this country as like a good example of like the real Asians are like, especially like the imperial Asians as well. And not like I said, there's a lot of amazing Asian Americans here, and. So I talked about Genghis Khan, the greatest warrior of all time. Far, far, far exceeds that of the story of David. And like there's all these just legendary stories about him. He was like an alien. There's like pictures of him on a horse you see oftentimes. And he was like like I said, he was like the first real gangster. He like supposedly... I have a picture here. I'll show you. This is not the greatest picture. I'll show you a couple. He supposedly had many kids, and fathered many kids, and he would stack his enemies' skulls in a pile after he conquered them. There's a picture there. He was supposedly very well endowed too. I'm not going to get too graphic on that one, but like there's like I said, there's really really interesting stories that like you can't really find anywhere else. But yeah, supposedly had a big piece, and there's like these interesting photos of him on a horse. They were real big into falconry. I was in Kazakhstan, and even Ukraine. They're real big into it. Alexei Romanov had like I forget 2,000 like they had 2,000 falcons, and supposedly knew them all by name. And they had like he would have this procession that was like 10 miles long. That were like they were 6 mile equivalent to like 6 kilometers long or 6 miles long. They were to get like dressed. The horses were dressed up and everything, and it was like a huge thing. Kind of like they get into fox hunting here, but it's like I've talked about in the past. This whole like this notion of the chase, the hunt, is like what it's really all about. There's this huge statue of him, a stainless steel statue. I don't think it's silver, but stainless steel in Mongolia, near their capital. And I would love to go there. Like I said, I'm just totally fixated and fascinated on the whole persona of Genghis Khan. I'm going to finish here, and then eventually after I read some more stuff about him, I'm going to do like a separate thing just on Genghis Khan alone. And like if you like the whole thing of conquering is just like there's no, like I said, greater warrior than him. And like I said, in the year 12 something, they took over Kiev. Like I said, they beat the Russians. They were just badass people, and I really believe that like the genetics were able to like assimilate into other cultures. One thing I find to be really interesting is it almost is like Pat Morta, the guy Mr. Miyagi from the legendary movie The Karate Kid. It was like very similar traits. I don't know if he was related to him, but Pat Morta did an amazing job in that movie, and like that whole movie like really got deep into like Asian philosophy, like essentially like lessons of honor, about balance, and it just like it really shows like the embraces the true like intent of a lot of white people, like they're just like very pretentious and like they rely very heavily on this gunboat diplomacy, that really in the end will be the downfall of the American empire. Or what have you. I mean, like I said, you know, we've been here 260, 70 years. Are we going to be here even another 20, 30 years, let alone thousands? And I ask you that question as well. I talked about Changus Khan. He was from the Lake Baikal region, which is today like modern-day Russia. And there's definitely some interesting phenomenon that go on in that region. I would like to visit that as well. It's the deepest lake in the world. There's like mythology about the Loch Ness Monster and other things as well, like a very deep level Russian military outpost as well. And if you look at like the way the borders and everything were set up, it like basically some of these areas in Siberia, Mongolia, and Kazakhstan, like like even if you wanted to just shoot missiles at them, like they couldn't reach like what the United States has with their technology. And I almost believe it was like part of a bigger engineering. Like the air there. If you also look at the airspace, they have like some of the least amount of air traffic in the world that flies over Mongolia. Kind of gets into the whole chemtrails conspiracy. Talked about Vladimir Ilyich Ulyanov and the Lenin being like going to the Lenin mausoleum, one of the defining moments of my life, and why they would dedicate a whole mausoleum to him in Moscow. He was a divine individual, Mongolian descent. Just like I said, the absolutely amazing, beautiful culture with the tea ceremonies. They were big into herding cattle. Like you go to the Chinese restaurant, Mongolian beef is a big one, and they actually didn't really eat a lot of beef. It was actually used for leather and for milk. They really weren't big into meat eating, to be honest with you. I find that to be really interesting. Goat is a very sacred animal there as well. The whole thing about Chingis Khan being 300 years old, I almost believe that. Like I almost believe that like there was some type of, supposedly at his funeral they killed everybody after they left there. There was like there was something secret that they didn't want people to know. Almost like he transcended to heaven, or I don't know, something bigger, like a rapture. Like I said, you see him very often pictured on a white horse. He was not a big fan of Muhammad the Prophet, as I am not. You know, I do believe Muhammad probably did transcend to heaven on a white horse. There's not really a whole lot of storyline as to what he did when he was here on this earth or whatever, but the Muslims will fight to death that he was the only prophet. I can tell you, he was not the only prophet. There were many others. I have a list of them, but like there have been many other prophets. Like the Mormons know this, other people know this, and I'm gonna sort of tie down here. I'm gonna end showing you this guy. This on YouTube. There's this guy that he does this throat singing. The Mongolians have this famous throat singing, and you have to have a real strong lungs to do it. And there's this instrument. It's called the Khuur. Khuur. It's like a two-stringed fiddle that has a horse head tied into the like carved into the scroll, like a violin has as well. And if you get a chance, look up the Mongolian flag. The Mongolian flag is really, really, really interesting. There's a lot of symbolism embedded in that as well. And Ogedi, there's like the various Khans that succeeded or were like basically came after Changus Khan, and like there was like four brothers that like basically fought for like the birthright, which I find interesting as well. And again, I owe a lot of thanks to the Encyclopedia of Mongolia and the Mongol Empire by Christopher P. Atwood. There's like a whole 4-year course just in this book alone. It's like 600 and some pages. I'm sure I'm going to find out a lot of other information. As always, I look forward to bringing that to you here on the Archangel 15. I end with Batsorig Vanchig, Mongolian throat singer playing the Mongolia, the Khuur.
Hey.